If you don't know already, Lithuanian uses a Roman script, which means just like English, but with some modifications. So for example, they would call them birds, and we would in English, or they would call them little birds, like diminutive birds, over the Z's, the C's, and the S's, and those make different sounds. So a zh, a ch, and a sh. Those are fairly predictable, very much like English, except for zhs are used a lot more often. And even at the start of a word, and that's pretty much unheard of in English. The only word I can think of is like genre. But even when they translate from Lithuanian to English, they'll change that out for an S or something. So they'll confuse you probably for a while to see that a place name like Žemaitija in Lithuanian becomes Samogitia in English. I'd say the pronunciation and the way letters are pronounced is extremely hard. You may think, oh, it's like English because the English script, but not even. I guess it would be kind of like how in Spanish different letters are pronounced in different ways. T's and D's are much softer. We say them with our tongue further back in a very hard way, and we even put D sounds where we have T's written. For example, we say city often when we want to, and maybe someone from, for example, a sister missionary from Wales would, I'm pretty sure she would say city and not city, like an American. So T's and D's are very soft, and that's actually one of the first things that I think would show for your accent, an American accent. Each consonant can also be softened, which is pretty hard too. Some of those are easy to soften. For example, a T, a normal T becomes a CH sound. So that's just a ta to a ch sound. So that's pretty easy. The L sound is kind of like an L and then a softened L, maybe like from Italian. And that, like, although you can probably make that sound, figure out how to make that sound, it's actually pretty hard to hear it. But as long as you understand what they're saying, and as long as you can answer back saying with them understanding that you're softening a certain letter, then I guess you're good. But as far as there are some dipthongs which are pretty hard too. I'd actually one member even goes as far to say that like it's impossible for foreigners to get these dipthongs right. Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm a master at that either. For example, an EI sound seems to be a very flat tongue at the bottom of the mouth sound, but they'll still probably tell you that you're saying it wrong, no matter what you try and do. It's kind of funny. They also have other diphthongs, which are probably easier to say, such as a UO, which is kind of like a wa sound. For example, the word dog is schwa. S-bird, U-O. So you've got, I'll say regular A for the things that are a little different. So you've got regular A nosone, which means it has a tail, and that means that it's always going to be a long A. While the first regular A can either be an or an sound, a nosone is always going to be an sound. And those used to be nasalized, and in related old languages, they would even have ends, or in Polish, for example. So in English, the word for hand, Lithuanian, it's ranka, and that's R-A-N-K-A. But in Polish, it's like ranka, if I understand correctly, or ranka, I don't know. And that has an E within nosone. So many of their letters have little nosones, and that means handkerchief, because they used to be nasalized, but now represent a letter that is either different in sound or is longer in sound. So A nosone, be, B, They actually say them, they have names, but I'll probably give you the way that we would refer to them as missionaries because it'll make most sense to an English speaker. So nosana, B, seabird, D, E, I don't know whether they care about the order here. They probably do. I don't remember. E, nosane. So that makes an A sound instead of an E dot. And these little tails, while they may seem a little annoying or whatever, they can actually help you with conjugation and with cases. For example, there are different verbs that will lose a nosa and grab an N when they conjugate. So that's helpful. But I don't think even Lithuanians notice that sometimes. But it might help you as a non-native figure out their language based on their characters. We got the E sauroi, which means the narrow E, or we'd say E dot as English speakers because it's just an E with a dot over it, and that's pretty much impossible to pronounce correctly. But it's like halfway between an I and an E, so I try to think of saying like a wide I or something. It's like an eh sound. F. Words that have F's in them are foreign and fairly new. For example, Joseph, as in husband to marry, is Juozapas with a P instead of an F. But Joseph, if you have the name Joseph, you may translate it to be Josephus. Or for example, the prophet Joseph Smith is translated as Josephus to emphasize that he's a person. So F is a modern letter. G, H, I nosana, which is an I with the nosana, and it's always an E sound. And an I is actually short, which is pretty unique for languages in that area. So unlike Spanish, where it's always a long E, you actually do have words in Lithuanian with a short I. For example, it's Vilnius. It's not Vilnius or something. It's actually a short I, just like English. That's nice. What a relief. And then Y comes there. So if you're looking up a word in the dictionary, Y comes after those. Even books there was actually somewhat a mistake in the MTC books. The words in English, maybe not, I don't exactly remember, but it took me a while to figure out where the words with Y are. They're right next to the I's, and that's the long I ilgoi. We have J's. J's make a Y sound, like a ya, but never as a vowel. K, L, M, N, O. O is very closed, usually like very rounded. P, they don't have Q's. R, R's are rolled to a varying degree on where you are, but I usually roll them a little bit too much. So sometimes people thought I maybe spoke a romantic language or something. They are actually rolled, and depending on where you are, they're rolled more or less, or depending on who and what you're saying sometimes. For example, a kid was asking us, please, please, and he was rolling that R like crazy. We were laughing. We thought it was so funny. QRS, T, U, unosene, and then U bar. U bar is just a long U. V makes a V sound. They don't have any W's. They'll use V's to substitute for W's. For example, my last name is Wagstaff, and I would introduce myself as Wagstaffus. TUV. They don't have X's, but they understand what that sound makes. For example, Maxima is a very popular chain that started in Lithuania and is throughout the Baltics. And that's kind of funny. Kind of cultural tip, 3 X's in Lithuania doesn't mean what you may think it means, it's kind of like a 3x's for a maxima, which is a really large maxima. Think of like a super Walmart. 2x's is kind of smaller, and 1x is a 1x maxima. It's just your local little kind of 7-Eleven sized shop. Y, we already talked about Y, and they've got Z and Z bird. I guess I forgot about S bird. S bird would be next to S, but I think those are all of them. You may also want to figure out how they write things in cursive, because cursive is very popular, and the letters don't exactly look the way you may expect them to. For example, what you may think is an L is actually a Z, or if you were to put a cross on the Z, they might get confused and think it's a J instead of a Z sound.